Today, I'm going to try to draw this group of autumnal trees in Tbilisi, Georgia, and my wife and I took a car out to this area, which is called Tbilisi Lake, and it's our first time here, and it's awesome. As you may know, while I do very much like Tbilisi, there are a few shortcomings, specifically with regard to drawing. It's not always the easiest place to find something to draw, and then subsequently sit and do so. Although there have been some outliers over the past few weeks, but they're almost always in some secluded spot around a corner, well outside of the hustle and bustle. And I would say that this spot takes that to a whole new level. This was probably a 20-30 minute drive from our apartment, so we're quite a ways out, but I think it was worth it because it's exactly the type of scene that I've been looking for. So let's talk about it. First, if you're new here, this series is about my process of learning to draw while I travel the world, and big emphasis on learning. These videos are not to educate you or to exhibit some creative might, but instead they're for documenting my progress and my process of learning to draw, which is achieved almost completely through these practices alone that you're seeing on screen. I've taken time to practice at home, off camera, but I find that most of my discovery, I guess you could say, comes from these moments when I sit down and give it my all. Anyway, if that sounds interesting to you, let me know, stick around, and subscribe. I would appreciate it. Right, so this is a totally different animal for me. Not only am I foregoing my usual architectural anchor, but I'm also attempting a level of contrast here that I'm certainly unaccustomed to. As you can see, I think I have a good thing going for the time being. When I originally chose this area as a sort of broad reference, I was actually standing on the opposite side, facing the opposite direction. So what you see here is a good example of backlighting, where the sun is facing the camera and the trees are in the way. That does two things for me. One, it illuminates the leaves. Leaves aren't totally opaque, so some of that light can shine through them, creating this sort of glowing effect. I think we all understand that intuitively, but not so much creatively. There's a big difference between understanding which direction the sun is coming from and why the leaves look that way, and needing to take a picture or something and knowing where to position yourself. A few years ago, I read some of Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, which have been conveniently collated and curated into a single book. And somewhere in that book was one of his notes about this very subject. He spoke about how to find and appreciate the beauty of trees and how the experience from within a group of them is so different from without. Anyway, it's a very interesting read, as you might imagine, so I recommend checking it out if that's your thing. Although he did a million things, so chances are there's something in there for everyone. So that's number one. Two, from this position, I'm seeing the trees completely in shadow. So from my perspective, the back side of them would be the opposite, completely in the light. So from here, I get these dark, wavy trunks with their twisting, gnarled branches, and that gives me a lot of leeway as I draw them in. Rather than concern myself with the texture of bark or suggesting the cylindrical shape of the tree, I can simply draw these pitch black shapes, implying that the sun is facing directly toward us. Had I chosen the opposite side, as I was planning, this image would be much flatter, less colorful at the top, and heavily contrasted, just not in the way we want, or I want. The grass and the bark and the leaves would have created this harsh mess of texture, and maybe it would have looked nice in its own way, but it would have been hell for me to try to draw. So I'm happy we made our way this way, because as you'll notice, it seems like I have a fighting chance. Envisioning this scene on paper for me was all about the composition, making sure each tree was not necessarily in the exactly correct place, but the compositionally pleasing place, if that makes sense, as well as a focus on that high contrast look. I didn't want the deep blackness of the trees to be undermined by a bunch of contrast throughout the rest of the frame. So I decided early on to leave things as minimal as I could without anything looking unintentional or careless. Also, I made it a point to try to apply a heavier weight to the foreground versus the background. The trees up front should be darker, the trees in the back should be lighter. This can be difficult and is difficult with a fine liner pen, but I did my best. On that note, for the same reason, which is depth ultimately, the trees in the back should also be thinner and higher up on the page, which I think I achieved. Overall, all the things that I envisioned for this drawing, I think came together pretty well. I think the grass was difficult for me. I think the pattern of the path was a little bit difficult for me. But ultimately, the primary components of this scene, I think I get across adequately in the end. Okay, so I feel like I didn't speak very broadly about this drawing or the process of drawing it, but to be honest, I don't think there was that much to say. It was a pretty straightforward approach, and luckily, I think it panned out for me. I'm excited about this one, even though it's conceptually simple comparatively to all my others. I'm really happy that I stuck out the process and trusted that it would take me where I wanted to go. So if you have any tips for me to take something like this to the next level, I'd love to hear them. So leave me a comment. And if you like this video, please go ahead and like it. And of course, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.